No, you've been waiting for us to discuss this. Huge news from over the weekend. It was revealed that the U.S. military, under both Presidents Trump and Biden, launched a covert campaign to deliberately spread misinformation about China's COVID vaccine called Sinovax. Now, that's according to bombshell reporting from Reuters. The campaign was aimed at Filipinos, Muslims, and other East and Central Asian populations that are frequently at odds with the Chinese government. The U.S. military created hundreds of fake social media accounts with the aim of persuading dissident peoples in Asia that the Chinese vaccine was dangerous and couldn't be trusted. Yeah. Now, one such post from a fake account read, "COVID came from China, and the vaccine also came from China. Don't trust China." The program was active during the Trump administration and continued under Biden for the first few months of his presidency. The irony, of course, is profound. At the same time that the federal government and the mainstream media were publicly sounding the alarm about so-called anti-vax misinformation being spread on social media by right-wing media figures, the government itself was deliberately circulating lies about vaccines. Now, an infectious disease specialist told Reuters that the covert operation was incredibly reckless, saying, quote, "I don't think it's defensible. I'm extremely dismayed, disappointed, and disillusioned to hear that the U.S. government would do that." Independent reporter Isaac Saul reacted to the news on X, writing, "Truly bombshell, Reuters report the U.S. military was running a clandestine operation to undermine trust in the China-made COVID-19 vaccine Sinovac in countries like the Philippines, literally doing exactly what we accused countries like Russia and China of doing." Absolutely bonkers. Alex Tabarrok, an economist at George Mason University, writes, "Frankly, this is sickening. The Pentagon's anti-vax campaign has undermined U.S. credibility on the global stage and eroded trust in American institutions, and it will complicate future public health efforts. U.S. intelligence agencies should be banned from interfering with or using public health as a front." So this is wild. It's one of those situations where, like, the thing they're accusing you of doing, they themselves were doing. I don't know who signed off on this. We deserve answers. There should be congressional hearings. But the contours of the plan were thus. They created a couple hundred fake Twitter accounts that were like aimed at Filipinos and the Uyghurs and other people to be like, well, you don't trust the Chinese government, so why would you trust this China-made vaccine? It's probably going to kill you or something. They were trying to foster skepticism of the Chinese government. Now, I think skepticism of the Chinese government is a good idea, not based on lies and propaganda, but by the reality of China's shady actions, its authoritarianism, its suppression of dissent, its handling of COVID, the fact that COVID originated in China, either in an unsafe, either in a wet market under unsafe conditions that should have been handled better by the Chinese government, or in a lab that was under safety standards that are appalling. So the Chinese government is at fault. Criticism of China, all fine. But we were telling people who were at risk of catching COVID, of dying from COVID, that they shouldn't get this vaccine, which the Chinese vaccine, it has even less efficacy than the Pfizer or Moderna, but it's still
helpful. It's still
helpful. Yeah. If you're an elderly person, a person with a pre-existing condition, getting this vaccine could have saved your life.
Yeah, this program started under Mark Esper, and if we think back to that kind of period when COVID was first starting, you really had misinformation coming from China, but you also had misinformation coming from Donald Trump and that administration. There was a lot of language, calling it the China virus, and there was a lot of pushing from the Trump administration back on the rhetoric around China.
Well, they were trying to say it came from. They were trying to say it came from the U.S. So they turned it back and said, "No, it came from China. It's the China virus." I don't have any problem with that.
While I think ethically it may not have been the smartest thing to do, we were really at a factual war with China. China was pushing that it came from a military lab in the U.S., so we were pushing back. The military persuasion campaign, I think, wasn't something that we should have been doing, obviously. I mean, they were saying that pork was in the shot, so Muslims shouldn't take it.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, that kind of stuff, you can't condone, you can't be supportive of it.
When they're saying that if you're spreading misinformation about COVID, you should be You should be run off social media. I mean,
But did it surprise you?
Biden ramped up pressure on Facebook and Twitter. He said they're killing people, them being Mark Zuckerberg personally responsible because they allowed things that were not true about COVID to be said online. Yeah. At the same time, they're running a clandestine operation to say untrue things about COVID online.
Yeah, I will say that the Biden administration ended this shortly into the start of the administration.
Yeah.
But I think it does deserve questions coming from Congress of what other programs like this are going on. How long was this program going? Who was it specifically aimed at? And why was this coming out of Central Command out of Tampa? This wasn't just like some side project going on. This was really focused.
Yeah, and this exact kind of thing is what so alarmed U.S. intelligence officials and the mainstream media about Russia in 2016. I mean, the whole Russian interference narrative, a lot of that, the sizable aspect of that allegation was based on fake social media accounts that Russia had created on Facebook and Twitter. Now, I have argued that that was overhyped and exaggerated as an important thing because it's a sliver of the population that actually saw those accounts. It wasn't, narrowly targeted at the right voters. It's not, it was like, generic, kind of like Hillary sucks. Yeah. Black people should hate Hillary. That's
although they did have some
not
of the
really like mind control,
They had some of the data that the Trump campaign had turned over that they could use to micro-target. But look, when you think about the military, they also used a similar approach with bin Laden. They went in and said that they were doing polio vaccines, which is how they were able to get the DNA samples to know that there was a likelihood that bin Laden was an Abbottabad. So the military does
I didn't know that.
They do have a history of using some of these health programs to go in and get information or test different programs. And so,
I mean, I guess that's at least
there's a reason.
A military operation to target, the most wanted terrorist criminal mastermind on the planet. So maybe that's okay. But this was the victims of this. Were the people we were sympathetic to.
Yeah.
Right? The dissident Uyghurs, the Filipinos, the people who want to resist Chinese tyranny, and this was harming them.
Yeah,
this was causing them to die. Like, it's horrible.
And the president of the Philippines, who's very much a dictator-ish person, he was pushing people to get the vaccine, and we were undermining that very argument. He is a dictator. I mean, Trump has, I think, praised him because he has very tough on crime policies. Wants to kill all drug dealers and users.
Exactly, and he was. I've read quotes from him where he was very frustrated that more people wouldn't get the vaccine. He was like, I'm a dictator. I can, if you want to do this, I can make you get it.
Either COVID will kill you or I will.
Right. Not good. I don't think people should be. I absolutely oppose, mandating or forcing people to get the vaccine, as Joe Biden did with his executive order for millions of American workers. But I don't think the government should be spreading things they know are not true about the vaccine. They should be allowing, discussion and debate over the efficacy of, over the policies surrounding. Different experts disagree on how essential the vaccine is for, depending what age, how many, if at all, you should get the shot if you're, a teenage male between the ages of these things are still being discussed, and I was so against shutting down these conversations, but there's no reason for the U.S. government to introduce things it knows are wrong into the conversation.
I mean, look, they did it in Russia, they did it in China. These are our adversaries. It's going to be interesting in the long run to see how our disinformation campaigns and manipulation campaigns are going to work in the same way that Russia and China are using them on us.
But I'm sorry to keep hammering this up. The hypocrisy is just astounding. At the same time,
imagine the U.S. government being hypocritical.
Well, at the same time, they were screaming at Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey about not taking down more COVID misinformation. They were actively putting it on the platform because they really did yell at that. I've become a lot more sympathetic to the social media companies because I was so furious with them for taking down election stuff and COVID stuff and really being pro-censorship. People in my kind of commentary on these issues, really let them have it. And then when more and more of those emails came out from the Twitter files, I started seeing the degree to which they were threatened by all of these massive institutions in government and in media to do these actions. I'm like, well, I still think they made some bad calls, but I could imagine myself in corporate comms facing, similar pressure. So just getting screamed at to do more at the same time, the government is committing the very crime they're mad about.
Yeah, I will say that they weren't doing it against Americans, which
that's
to
the
some
defense.
degree makes it better, but it gets to the
It's
point.
illegal if they do it against Americans.
Yes, which wouldn't be the first time the U.S. government did something illegal. But I will say, I think that the nexus between government and social media, it's very intertwined. We're seeing a lot of people from social media go into government. A lot of people from government go back into social media. It's a revolving door that I think is dangerous. There's a lot of influence and peddling that's going on, and the ability to manipulate the perception of Americans and around the world is something that I don't think we really take into account enough.
Well, this will not be the last time we discuss this story on Rising. You take my word for it. More of the show right after this.